So when I started doing posters, it was definitely like a reaction against that. I just wanted to do my own thing, and I really stood my ground on that. Like, I didn't want to be someone else's tool for their ideas, whether they are good or bad. So, you know, I would meet some band and they're like, oh, we really want you to do a poster. We have this idea of like, you know, a vacuum in outer space and like we're floating around. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm into.
That was poster artist Lil Tuffy. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from bartenders, doctors, dancers, musicians, and other San Franciscans, telling stories and responding to the question, what is it about this place? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6, Part 2. In Part 1, Tuffy talked about moving to SF and getting immersed in the music scene here. In this podcast, he'll talk about how he got started doing posters for music venues and bands all over town. Here's Lil Tuffy.
Bottom of the Hill was kind of the first venue to just give me carte blanche to do whatever I want. And they were really cool and supportive. And they introduced me to a lot of bands. Some I still work with now, like the Dwarves. And then the Parkside, I was also doing stuff and working with like Alan Forbes and the Firehouse guys and a few other people. And then Noise Pop started doing stuff at Parkside as well. And everything just kind of fused together pretty quickly.
Back then, pardon my ignorance, but like, were you already using computers to do art, or?
Yeah, I was, and it was interesting working with the Firehouse because they were still like old-fashioned manual. So they do some stuff on the computer, but they do all their color separations by hand and use this stuff called Rubylith to do the different color layers, which is like a red film, and you use an X-Acto knife to cut away different areas. And I did it on the computer kind of the exact same way. And it was interesting having them like force me to do it their style and me showing them how I do it and the amount of time I would save as opposed to them. And they also did like, 7 to 10 color posters, and I was doing two colors just because I couldn't afford it. And because I wasn't using the Rubylith, I had to pay for all my films, which I could barely afford. So I was just using like an 8.5 by 11 inkjet thing and using colored transparencies. And that kind of defined my early aesthetics, just very limited designs, small, lots of open space. And I started using colored paper rather than printing huge fields of color because it's to save on ink, basically. So it was just
a lot of negative space.
Yeah. And aesthetic white space. And so I think that kind of helped define what I was doing when I first started doing this, just because just trying to address different problems, just budget, time, whatever it was. So it made my stuff look a lot different than what the rest of the stuff that was coming out of the Firehouse, even the other artists that were also working there at the time, Alan Hines. I think Forbes was pretty much done by the time I got there. But it was definitely a departure. And then seeing my influence on those guys was interesting too. Like when they started using limited palettes or not using every single inch of the paper to put some kind of design on, it was cool to have that kind of creative environment and kind of work off each other.
And what is the Firehouse?
The Firehouse Custom Rock Art Company was Chuck Sperry and Ron Donovan, and they were kind of at the forefront of the 90s poster movement, and they had a studio here in San Francisco. And I met them at the Parkside, and they kind of took me under their wing, and I went and met with them a few times, and they're like, well, we're going to Europe for a couple months. Here's the keys. See you later. So they kind of just let me loose, and I worked for them a couple years.
When they were gone that first time, did that involve taking in new work?
I did a few jobs for them while they were gone, but mostly, they went to tour Europe and do poster shows, and that was it for 2 months.
How do you think your aesthetic has changed in the intervening 15-ish years?
When I first started out, I spent a lot of time kind of aping other people's styles.
Such as?
like Art Chantry and Frank Kozik and the Firehouse, all these guys that I had collected posters for and kind of informed my taste and my aesthetic. So I just experimented with a lot of different styles, and I don't know if I ever intended to set up my own kind of look and feel, but the fact that I work in so many different styles kind of helps. So sometimes I'm using really photographic heavy images. Sometimes it's just text. Sometimes it looks like a letterpress poster, whether it's found images or collage and appropriation. So a lot of, like, when I get hired now, people are like, oh, just do a Tuffy poster. I'm like, well, what kind of Tuffy poster? Like, do you want this really minimalist one? Do you want this style? And try to narrow it down. So, and that's the other thing. People, like, I run into people all the time, like, oh yeah, I have like this great poster that you did. I'm like, oh, which one? And they'll say whatever band, and I'm like, oh, that's not my poster. It's like Jason Munn's usually, but it's something else that's kind of in the similar style of mine. And I don't know. I never really take offense. I'm kind of honored when people mix me up with someone else. So
Yeah, or maybe they think, or they have this idea of San Francisco music posters.
Yeah,
and you're the first
I'm not
person they
the
think
only
of.
person
You're
that
not.
does posters here. So,
Yeah.
luckily there's a huge, vibrant community here and across the world. So,
Are you friends or friendly with other poster artists?
yeah.
Here?
So, we have a nonprofit called the American Poster Institute, and it was founded here in San Francisco, where they had the first Flat Stock, which is the first gig poster convention, and they had that at the old Cell Space, which is now gone. And I lived next door to it, and that's kind of where I first met these people. There was a site called gigposters.com, which is also now defunct. So now I'm on the board of the API. I help run Flatstock and a lot of those poster shows all over the world. Our next one is in South by Southwest. It's our biggest show of the year. We do shows in Austin, Barcelona, Chicago. We used to do Seattle. That didn't happen this year. And a bunch of other smaller satellite shows as well. So from March till November, I'm gone at least one weekend of a month doing a festival somewhere. It's a really interesting community. I mean, technically, we're all in competition with each other, and we're, competing for the same clients. Sometimes it's regional, and that defines it, but a lot of us work for bands that are touring and do stuff internationally. But it's an incredibly supportive community, and some of my best friends have come out of this poster community, and I could travel the world, and I have a place to stay, I have a place to work, and there's never really any bad vibes at all. Occasionally there's some upstart kid that'll show up and like, hey man, I'm here, like, how do I do this? Give me all your contacts. And maybe after 6 months or a year of hanging out with us, then they're part of the crowd too. Well, presently I do almost all the posters for Golden Voice, so the Warfield, the Regency, and now Slim's and Great American Music Hall. I probably do a half dozen or so posters for the Fillmore each year. And Another Planet, I do a lot of stuff for the Fox and the Greek and Bill Graham. Working with the venues, it's great because San Francisco, again, has this huge, rich poster history, and people seem to really understand it. And they pretty much give me carte blanche to do whatever I want, which is why I started doing this to begin with. When I was working on the internet and freelancing, I got really tired of working with art directors, and not even really art directors, but whoever was above me in some company that had some opinion on something that usually didn't have any kind of real basis other than their personal preference or whatever. Like, I don't know, especially the internet back then, they was like, well, can my grandmother use this? And I'm like, who cares if your grandmother can use? Is that our target audience? No, so I don't really care. They're like, well, why is this yellow? I don't like yellow. And just dumb questions like that. And so when I started doing posters, it was definitely like a reaction against that. I just wanted to do my own thing. And I really stood my ground on that. Like, I didn't want to be someone else's tool for their ideas, whether they are good or bad. So, I would meet some band and they're like, oh, we really want you to do a poster. We have this idea of, like, a vacuum in outer space and like we're floating around. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm into. And even like the early days of the Fillmore, the first couple times they contacted me, they do a lot of art direction, and it's one of the few clients I have where I submit multiple designs and we go back and forth. And there was what was it for? Like one of the first posters they hired me for was some swing resurgence band, and they didn't like my first design, and then the art direction was like something about the Transamerica building, swing dancing with the Bay Bridge, and I'm like, well, I do work in a lot of styles, but I'm not really an illustrator, and that doesn't really seem like it's up my alley, and I'm probably not the right person for that job. And I didn't really work for them again for probably 5 or 6 years. But yeah, it's nice to like be trusted with your own ideas, and bands will what mostly happens now is they'll tell me what they don't want, things that they're sick of, like hearts or literal translations of the band name.
Birds.
Like, yeah, birds are definitely like the Fillmore is like no skulls, no cars. I can't remember what else.
It's not the 90s anymore.
Yeah, there's just, and I kind of understand that. Like, I think that's the other problem when you're curating a large body of posters or whatever it is. Like, you see a lot of the same things all the time, but you also have to keep in mind that the people that are coming to concerts don't. Like, maybe they're coming to 1 or 2 concerts a month, and so they're not really seeing the same repetition of an image over and over again.
Although, one thing in the back of my mind, and I'll just talk about it now, do you have any posters up in the Fillmore in that room with the posters?
No, I don't know when the last time they've added to that. It seems to be... or
maybe not necessarily in that
constant.
room, but anywhere up there.
In the front hallway, they'll hang up posters for upcoming bands and posters that have happened in the past. So, like 2 years ago, I remember walking in there and like 4 of my posters were hanging up because those bands were coming soon, and that was like cool to see. And I had someone take my picture and put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
Send it to my mom.
But also just not only your personal reaction to your own work, but just that room.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much history in there, and when I take people to shows and they've never really been in there before, and like we can go in there and have a drink and look at this stuff and talk about which ones they like, which ones I like. My favorite Fillmore poster of all time is this Devo poster, and it's very different than almost every other Fillmore poster. It has this guy with like a mustache and these thick glasses. He kind of looks like Kurt Rambis, who used to play for the Lakers in the 80s. And he's just kind of looking up at the sky with this bewildered look on his face, and it's these like fluorescent colors. It's like a very good Devo poster.
Who made that?
Arlene, who's the current art director at the Fillmore. It's just a great poster. But looking at all like the old, like the early Bill Graham posters and the psychedelic stuff, and it was the last conversation I had with someone there was how that style was so prevalent. It didn't really matter what band was playing. It was still like this psychedelic text and swirly things, and kind of a naked woman on it somewhere, and whether it was, I don't know who it was, like Deep Purple or Booker T or whatever it was, all genres got the same kind of look, and then you can slowly start to see things change. And then when you go into the other room and you look at a lot of the 90s posters and the advent of Photoshop and filters, and like there's a lot of lens flare and things like that, that suddenly like weird textures. So it'll be interesting to see what we do now, how that ages, and because it seems like a lot of stuff that's happening now is very referential to things that have happened in the past. But who knows?
A lot of, you mean like a lot of, for lack of a better term, kind of throwback or homage type work?
I think there's a lot of that, but there's also just like a lot of, beyond just the poster aesthetic and the different styles it's gone through, like a lot of postmodern design, a lot of futuristic type stuff, and then like a lot of minimalism. I think a lot of the early stuff was kind of more naive art, and people that wouldn't even consider themselves artists at the time, but slowly became one. Like outside like the masters, like Rick Griffin, people like that. But it's interesting just to look back and see how a lot of stuff changes.
One other aspect of the room, sorry, going back to the Fillmore, the poster room, that I appreciate is when you're walking along and just spotting all this San Francisco music history in there. Does that do anything for you? Not, whether you actually like those bands, just seeing what a rich history this city has produced, and a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
I mean,
the place itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know if I would call it a church, but it is this kind of like amazing resource, and the history that's there is incredible. And like the last poster I did for them was Jawbreaker. So like talk about like, a very huge San Francisco centric band.
It's the Jinx Removing poster.
Yeah.
I have that. It's waiting to get framed.
Cool.
It's beautiful. I love it.
So that was like, I've wanted to do a poster for them since they announced their getting back together, but so it was awesome to do it for the Fillmore and for them, and I don't know, hopefully be on the wall up there someday. Yeah, I pretty much will do anything except like websites. I don't really do any tech work anymore. But yeah, I'd love to do posters and graphic design, logos, and I don't know, whatever people need that doesn't require making a website.
That was poster artist Lil Tuffy. Check back next week when we'll hear from photographer Sloan Cantor. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald, aka Joe Bagale. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so please like, share, and comment on our content there. All podcasts from seasons 1 and 2 are up on our website, storiedsf.com. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. We love feedback, so please send comments or suggestions to storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.